Chapter 10. Life of Tiberius Gracchus. To such oratory as this, the utterance of a noble spirit, delivered with genuine passion to a people profoundly moved and fully aroused to the speaker's support, none of Tiberius's adversaries could make an effective reply. So they abandoned any attempt to oppose him by argument, and sought the help of Marcus Octavius, one of the tribunes of the people, a serious young man of a steady character, discreet and a close friend of Tiberius. For this reason, Octavius at first declined their advances out of regard for Tiberius. But in the end, the unremitting pressure of so many powerful and influential men proved too much for him, and so he set himself to oppose Tiberius and found means to obstruct the passage of the law. Now, in this situation, the decisive power rests with the dissentient tribune, for if a single tribune interposes his veto, the wishes of the rest are of no avail. These tactics angered Tiberius, and he thereupon withdrew his conciliatory law and introduced one which was more gratifying to the people and harsher to the illegal owners of the land. It demanded that they should vacate the land which they had acquired in defiance of the earlier laws, but this time it offered no compensation. So day after day the two speakers fought out this issue on the rostra. But although each exerted his power of expression to the utmost in the effort to defeat his opponent, neither, we are told, ever resorted to abuse, nor in the heat of passion let fall a word of disparagement of the other. For it is not only in the midst of Bacchic orgies, as Euripides writes, but in the control of personal ambitions and passions that a noble nature and a sound upbringing serve to compose and govern the mind. Moreover, when Tiberius learned that Octavius was himself affected by the law as the owner of large tracts of public land, he begged him to withdraw his opposition, and offered to pay Octavius the value of his holding out of his own resources, although he was by no means a rich man. But Octavius refused Tiberius's offer, whereupon Tiberius issued an edict prohibiting all the other magistrates from transacting any public business until the people had cast their vote either for or against his law. He also placed his private seal on the temple of Saturn, so as to prevent the quaestors from drawing money out of the treasury or paying it in. At the same time, he gave public notice that a penalty would be imposed upon any praetor who disobeyed the edict. The result of this was to alarm the magistrates so much that they suspended all their various functions. The response of the property-owning faction was to dress themselves in mourning and walk about in the forum with a dejected appearance, calculated to arouse compassion. But at the same time they secretly formed a conspiracy against Tiberius and hired a band of cutthroats to assassinate him. Tiberius, for his part, and this soon became common knowledge, took to wearing a dagger under his toga, of the kind which is used by robbers, and is known as a dolon. Chapter 11. When the appointed day arrived, Tiberius was summoning the people to cast their votes. The party of the rich seized the voting urns, and the whole proceedings were thrown into confusion. However, Tiberius's supporters were numerous enough to force the issue, and they were mustering their strength to do this when Manlius and Fulvius, two men of consular rank, fell on their knees before Tiberius, clasped his hands and implored him to stop the proceedings. Tiberius sensed that the situation had now reached a crisis, and out of respect for two such distinguished men, asked them what they wished him to do. They replied that they had no competence to advise on such an important matter, but they earnestly entreated him to refer the whole problem to the Senate. And to this proposal Tiberius agreed. However, the meeting of the Senate produced no solution, because the rich were able to dominate the proceedings, and so Tiberius, since he could find no other way of putting his law to the vote, resorted to a measure which was neither constitutional nor just. He had Octavius deprived of his tribuneship. But before taking this action he addressed Octavius in affectionate terms, clasped his hands, and pleaded with him in public to give way and gratify the wishes of the people, who, after all, were demanding nothing more than their just rights, and who would receive little enough in return for the dangers and suffering which they endured to protect the state. Finally, when Octavius rejected his appeal, Tiberius told him that since they were colleagues in office who possessed equal authority but found themselves opposed on matters of vital importance, it was impossible for them to complete their terms of office without an open conflict, and that he could see only one remedy for this situation, namely for one or the other to resign his position. He urged Octavius that the people should first give their vote on his own case, and promised that he would immediately retire into private life if this was what the citizens desired. But Octavius rejected this proposal too, whereupon Tiberius announced that he would put the matter of Octavius's deposition to the vote unless his opponent were to change his mind after reflection. Chapter 12. Upon this understanding, he dissolved the assembly. But on the following day, when the people had gathered again, he mounted the rostra and made yet another attempt to persuade Octavius. Finally, when his opponent still remained immovable, Tiberius proposed a motion depriving Octavius of his tribuneship and called upon the citizens to cast their votes at once. Now, there were 35 tribes. The vote of each tribe counted as one, and was decided by the majority within the tribe. And when 17 of them had voted, and the addition of one more would compel Octavius to become a private citizen once again, Tiberius stopped the voting and once more appealed to his opponent. Throwing his arms around him, kissing him in full view of the people, and fervently entreating him not to allow himself to suffer this humiliation, nor to oblige his fellow tribune to incur the blame for introducing so harsh and odious a measure. We are told that Octavius could not remain unmoved. As he listened to this entreaty, his eyes filled with tears, and for a long while he did not utter a word. But presently, when he looked up towards the rich men and the landowners, who stood solidly grouped together, his awe of them and fear of losing their good opinion hardened his resolve, and he decided to risk the worst and tell Tiberius that he must do as he pleased. He was in the habit of employing his own freedmen. Accordingly, the motion was passed, and Tiberius then ordered one of his freedmen to drag Octavius from the rostra. He was in the habit of employing his own freedmen instead of the public officers, and this made the sight of Octavius being ignominiously dragged along even more distressing. Worse still, the people then made a rush at the prisoner, and although his wealthy sympathizers ran all together to help and spread out their hands to protect him. It was only with great difficulty that Octavius was pulled away and rescued from the mob. At the same time, a faithful slave, who had planted himself in front of his master to protect him, had his eyes torn out, in spite of the efforts of Tiberius, who, as soon as he grasped what was happening, came running down and did his utmost to restrain the rioters.